Ma, ma, ma. I'm Sharpie Evans, bitch. Hello nerds, welcome back to another video. Gabriella here. Today is a good day and it's going to get even better because I am back with an in-depth review of a special book, the one, the only, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Miss Taylor Jenkins Reid. Hell yeah. I finally got and read this book last month. It's a book talk favorite, a bookstagram favorite, a booktube favorite. Everybody and the mother has read her and has read other of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. This is my first of hers, but I'm so excited. I love this book so very much. As you may know, my in-depth reviews are only left for books that left a mark. Okay, we're talking about the ultimate 5 stars. So I'm very excited to share my love of this book with you and go in depth on just the everything, the plot, the characters, okay, the quotes. I have highlighted a few quotes here that I just love, that are just outstanding. So without further ado, let us get into it. But first, don't forget to subscribe. Click that little bell icon so you can be notified of every new video and so you can join the nerd gang. So let's just get into it. So let us start with, first of all, this cover. Love it. And if you've read the book, well, if you haven't read the book, first of all, click out. I love you. Thank you for clicking on. But girly, you don't want to get spoiled. Okay, for this book, you don't. You want to read it. It's not even that long. It's 385 pages exactly. I mean, come on. That's easy. That's a light afternoon. Some people are like that. I mean, it took me a little bit longer to read it, but still, it's not long, and it reads really fast, and you get really enthralled in Evelyn Hugo's past. So please go read it if you haven't. This is your spoiler warning, okay? But yes, I've taken it with me quite a bit. Like, to me, this is battered, and I realize you can't really tell that much on camera, but it has been through the entirety, okay, not the entirety, but it has been through a really long stretch of road between where I am from, Montreal, and the northern Quebec area. It has seen some new horizons, okay? We have both. Evelyn and I have traveled together. We've seen some new places. As always, we will start the review by going into the characters. So first, Evelyn, icon, queen, deity. I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, what I love most about Evelyn is how she's like, I'm a horrible person. We know this. But I also have no regrets. And I'm like, girl, I respect that. I mean, I have, I'm a people pleaser, so I don't get it. But I get it. You know what I mean? But I love somebody who's aware of their mistakes but still trudges on. I think it's a good lesson for people and everybody in general. Sometimes we spend so much time just like fixating on our little mistakes or even our big mistakes. And sometimes like, it happened. Like, what you gonna do about it? Like, sometimes you just have to move on and work forward. And there's so many, I'm sure there's so many in everybody's life, mistakes that you can be like, hey, because of this mistake, butterfly effect, this amazing thing happened to me, because of this happened. And, I wouldn't be where I am today without this mistake. And, you could be in a good place today. If you're not in a good place, don't think about that, okay? We won't talk about it. But if you're in a good place in your life, that is the moment where you can be like, if I hadn't done this mistake, which I thought was going to destroy my life a few years ago, I wouldn't be where I am today. I mean, that's just incredible. And I think Evelyn embodies that thought process and something I've been thinking for a long time. She was she was reading my mind. She was reading my soul, okay? By still being that bitch. So she wins it all. So when it comes to Monique, I feel like she's like the other main character, but also not really. Like, I feel like overall in the story, she's kind of like a secondary, even tertiary character. But I love how much Monique was learning from Evelyn. And I love how it made her a better person. Evelyn talks about how she wasn't a great person and how she didn't do great things. And yet Monique, managed to turn like sort of these negative aspects in Evelyn and make them good aspects in her, which I thought was so interesting and such a cool way for Taylor Jenkins Reid to like go with the character. And you could definitely, like, it was very transparent, the influences in Monique's personality, life decisions throughout the book. and how they were influenced by Evelyn. And honestly, I ain't gonna lie. When I started reading this book, and Evelyn explained like how the which one call it the like their plan was going to go, how she was going to how Monique was going to be her biographer, how she was going to be like might be 12 worth 12 million, that's like pennies to me, you should get all the money. I was like, is Evelyn gonna come out and be like, I'm your secret mom, your mom is not really your mom, she's your adopted mom and I'm your actual mom? Sure, that's what it was. I mean, Monique is half black, it could have worked. Like, she's half black, half white. Evelyn could have been the white side. Obviously, they were connected in a different way. But yeah, those are the two like main characters of the story. And of course, there's still Celia and Harry, which I think are the two biggest other characters in the story for sure. If we're counting out Monique's life, I feel like her characters were really like useless. Like her ex-husband, like we don't care. Do I remember his name? Not at all. It really doesn't matter. But Celia was. It's funny how Celia seemed like the gentler, nicer person in the couple of Evelyn versus Celia. However, she, like, there's a moment where Evelyn says, when Celia is hurt, like, even if you hurt her accidentally, which is what Evelyn does multiple times throughout the story, Celia will purposefully hurt you when she's been hurt, which I think is a lot more insidious than what Evelyn does. Evelyn is kind of clumsy in relationships. She's clumsy in friendships. She's clumsy with people and with and she doesn't take into account how some decisions will affect people. And I think that's definitely part of her selfishness coming out in a different way inadvertently. While Celia is not a mean person, she thinks about her actions. And I feel like thinking about your action and doing something hurtful to someone while thinking about it and doing it on purpose, to me, is a million times worse than doing something bad to someone by accident. 100%. And so if you look at the relationship on paper, you would think Evelyn is, the meanie, the baddie, and Celia is like the sweetheart, the Hufflepuff. But she really isn't. She is Slytherin. She is Stone Cold Slytherin. And the things that she says to Evelyn when they fight, girly, that could have gone unsaid. That could have gone unsaid. Okay, why? Why? Okay, so, but I think there's a way that Taylor Jenkins Reid, I'm going to say her full name every time. I love when the people have three names. But the thing that Taylor does with her characters in this book, and I hope that she does in her other novels, because I definitely want to read the rest of her back published books, but is adding nuance to them and making them so freaking three-dimensional that it's like almost like unbearable. You feel like they are real. Like the amount of TikToks that I've seen of people searching on Netflix Evelyn Hugo's like movie filmography, like, bitch, she ain't real, but she felt real. Okay, and I knew she wasn't real because brain cells, but I wish she was real, and it felt like she was real throughout the entirety of the snow. And like to this day, if someone came up to me and said, hey, by the way, Evelyn Hugo actually existed, I would be like, sure, I believe you. Because she was, like, all her characters were so three-dimensional. I mean, when you look at Harry was another big part of the story and a big part of Evelyn's life, and was a bigger constant in Evelyn's life that Celia ever was, or anybody else in her life was, until her child. And, I mean, he feels so three-dimensional. A gay man hiding in the closet, trying to make it work in Hollywood, where you're scrutinized all the time and doing all these things to hide it, just like Evelyn was. It's just, I don't know. I love the way the characters were created, the characters were portrayed, the way they were built up was incredible. And we won't talk about Harry's demise, okay? I still can't handle it, okay? I still can't handle it. But yes, amazing characters, very nuanced, very great. I wouldn't say they're not morally great, because they still have morals and blah, blah, blah. But I think they are gray in the sense that all humans are gray, like Michael Jackson once said, there's no black, there's no white, And as E.L. James once said, there are 50 shades of gray. But I think other characters were perfectly that right level of nuance. No one was perfectly pure. No one was perfectly evil. Everybody was just kind of like in that middle room that I just love so much, and I wish other people, authors, dared to venture. I feel like sometimes people try to make things too rosy, and like the character will be perfect in every sense, and oh my god, physically inside of whoa, like they're a freaking saint, and it kind of gets boring sometimes because sometimes you want accuracy in your characters, you want depth, and you can't have depth if they're perfect. Perfect is a very shallow line. Wow, I'm so philosophical, you guys. Woo! But anyways, that is all my thoughts on the characters. Let us get into the plot. So now for the plot. Like I said previously, I did have a inkling. Like in the first 12 pages, I still remember the page number. Page 12, I was like, this is sus. Evelyn is definitely Monique's mom. She wasn't, obviously. And the timeline wouldn't have worked at all. She would have had a baby at what, like 50? And how do you hide a pregnancy like that? Actually, she could have in Spain. But anyways, I digress. So I do love everything about this book, yes, and everything about the plot. I love how we went back and forth in the form of an interview, and how we never really left much of Evelyn's house. And the few times we do, we just see Monique getting into her apartment and talking about her ex-husband, or saying goodbye to her ex-husband, or him surprising her there, or something random. But I did really enjoy the back and forth, but at the same time, I did not care about Monique's life at all. Like, her ex-husband, forgettable. That whole storyline, I feel like it was just a way to introduce the the fact that Evelyn influenced her in ending her marriage for good by being like, I was sad that my marriage failed, and her realizing that what she was afraid of was failure in the marriage and not actually, you know, like the love ending. She didn't care about that. So of course that was necessary in that sense, but I just feel like, honestly, if you had removed all the Monique parts from the book, I still think it would be an incredible book. I don't think it removes anything from the story, not at all. I still think it adds to it, but so little that like it would have made a minute difference. It did probably raise the page numbers, but not even by that much. I would safely say that like 90% of the book is just Evelyn's past life. Like that's pretty much it. So I touched on this in my July wrap up, which is now live on my channel. I have to say, no book has made me cry the way this book has, and I don't know if I will ever be the same ever again. I may be a little bit traumatized, to be fair, because I never thought this book would make me cry like that. I know everybody said they cried, but like everybody says they cried the Notebook and the Titanic, and I didn't do that. People died at like random movies like Big Hero 6 or Inside Out. But I didn't. And then in the last 50 pages, yo, I don't even cry like that for my own life problems and like real life things. Why was I crying to a book like that? Why was I attached to the characters like that? Why was I so shook by what happened in Evelyn's life? The people she lost. Why? Taylor Jenkins Reid, what kind of drugs did you ensnare into these pages? I need more. Okay. But yeah, it's so funny because I'm looking at like the tabs on my book. You can definitely tell when it went into like a downward spiral of the roller coaster, because I stopped like annotating at about page like 100 pages before the end. I like stopped annotating completely. Well, I don't really annotate, but like I save, and oh my god, it was just what a freaking roller coaster. Like, what? So much death, so much sadness, so much disappointment. It's just, I've never read anything like this. I've never seen anything like this. I've never smelled anything like this. I've never heard anything like this. Like, What the fuck? What the fuck?
6.5 hours later.
Hello, I am back. I was gone. You won't notice that I was gone, but I was gone. Because someone forgot her tea. And how can you have tea time with the Gaby, in-depth reviews, without a nice tea? So today, again, I have some matcha, and I have my Marvel mug with some of the OG Avengers. So let us continue with the plot of Seven Husbands. So we were talking about the last 100 pages. The heartbreaking, what would I say, the destroying, the destructor of souls. It was really rough because you have Harry dying, which is, whew. I realized that the characters were going to die, but also I didn't know how they were going to die. You know, people die, and it was obvious that Evelyn was alone throughout the novel, like in the parts where we would go to like present time with Monique and stuff. Like Celia wasn't anywhere to be found, you know. So if they ended up together, married in Spain, so we have Harry die, and her daughter go to the funeral, which is heartbreaking. And then you make her get back with Celia. They are happy, they're in Spain, but not really, because you've got Celia's lung disease looming over. Ugh. Breaking my heart. Just. And it's like, we lost all this time fighting over stupid shit when we could have just been living our lives. And it makes. And I feel like the closest Evelyn has ever come to regret anything has been that. Or, in a sense, it's probably the one thing she does regret is spending that time fighting with Celia and not talking to her for like up to 5 years on end, instead of, you know, being with her and just leaving Hollywood, leaving it all behind. Now I have The Lucky One by Taylor Swift just playing in my head in the background. But yeah, that was just. And then, yeah, Celia died. Then her daughter gets cancer. Then her daughter dies. And honestly, there is still nothing worse than a parent losing a child. And I'm not one of those people. I'm not a parent. And I've never lost a child. But I just know it is the worst thing ever because, you know, there's a quote that says, if, you know, there's a word for a child losing a parent, there's a word for a wife losing a husband and vice versa, but there is no word for a parent who lost a child because it is unspeakable. And I don't remember where that quote is from. Did it play in an episode of Criminal Minds? Possibly good. But that is just soul destroying. That's just. But otherwise, you know, the plot was incredible from beginning to end. The book was, you know, I was enthralled. I was absorbed into the story. It was incredible. And yeah, those are all my thoughts on the plot, honestly, because there's so much I could say, but I feel like the book says it all, you know? The book says it all. So finally, last step in every Tea Time with Gaby book review, a sip of matcha, but also the quotes that I highlighted. I have to say, I didn't highlight that many quotes of Seven Husbands. I think I was so absorbed into the story that I didn't spend much time just like taking my time and taking in like a good quote. But I have a few, and so we will savor them together. We will remember, recall. So here, my first quote is actually on page 61, chapter 8. "How old are you, sweetheart?" Brick asked me. 18, I said. "So I bet you had my picture up on your wall, huh?" It took everything I had not to grab my drink and throw it right in his face. Agreed. I mean, any man who just assumes that you would have his picture on your wall is trash, and he sounds like trash. You know, he reminds me of, I feel like he's like a grown-up. Brick was like a grown-up Cormac McLagan from Harry Potter. Does that make sense to anybody else? It's just the vibe I'm getting. The next quote I saved is actually page 63, 2 pages later. "There are people who see a beautiful flower and rush over to pick it. They want to hold it in their hands. They want to own it. They want the flower's beauty to be theirs, to be within their possession, their control. And I thought that was just a beautiful quote and so accurate and so real. And just this quote is like a beautiful example of Taylor Jenkins Reid's exceptional writing. So the next quote is from page 76. This one is a very short one, and it just says, "Be wary of men with something to prove." You know, if you know, you know, you know, you know. A man who has something to prove is scary. Next quote is on page 98. I asked for the check. It's on the house, he said, which I thought was the dumbest thing. Because if there is anyone that could be getting should be getting free food, it isn't rich people. Yeah. This reminds me of, actually, I recently watched the video 73 Questions with Lord. You know, Vogue does those 73 questions things, and I love those. They're so much fun. And she said, like, one of the dumbest things that she found from, you know, becoming an actress and becoming famous and rich is that people will offer you things for free. So I think it's kind of a funny coincidence, but I agree. I still think it's the funniest thing. And it actually also reminds me of the Hannah Montana movie, the one, the only, the classic. It should have won an Oscar, in my opinion. But she goes for a shopping spree, and like people are giving her shit for free, and she's like, "People are giving me stuff for free because I'm famous," and I just thought it was funny. So next quote, page 102. People don't find it very sympathetic or endearing, a woman who puts herself first. Which, this quote is kind of the embodiment of Evelyn. You know, there's so many people in the story who don't necessarily like her or are wary of her because she puts herself first. She's that bitch, and she cares about herself and what's coming next. You know, maybe she is borderline selfish. That's like a deeper conversation. Or maybe she is completely selfish. I don't know. It's up to you, up to the reader. But, you know, there are things that she did in the story that painted her as selfish to other people's eyes that really weren't selfish at all. Next quote, very soon after, page 112. People think that intimacy is about sex, but intimacy is about truth. When you realize you can tell someone your truth, when you can show yourself to them, when you stand in front of them bare and their response is, "You're safe with me," that's intimacy. And by those standards, that moment with Celia was the most intimate one I'd ever had with anyone. And that is not only a beautiful quote, just like lyrically, okay, just the way it is written, but not only is it completely true, does that make it intimate? No. But that quote is like completely true, and I agree wholeheartedly. But it's also a beautiful moment in a beautiful romance. It just encapsulates it all, and also is a great learning moment for Evelyn, because I don't think she ever had any moments of intimacy like that before, and she finally gets to have it. So that's pretty wild. And the final quote I have saved is way further, page 271. So almost 200 pages later. Over 100 pages later. I have two quotes actually on page 271. The first one is, "There's a difference between sexuality and sex. I use sex to get what I wanted. Sex is just an act. Sexuality is a sincere expression of desire and pleasure. That I always get for Celia." She then says right after, this is not a quote that I highlighted, but I want to mention it too. Because right after this, Monique says, "I hadn't thought about it like that before." And Evelyn replies, "Being bisexual didn't make me disloyal. One has nothing to do with the other, nor did it mean that Celia could only fulfill half my needs." Which, I mean, hit the nail on the head. But that quote, "There's a difference between sex and sexuality and sex," was like very interesting, because I also didn't see it that way as Monique. Like, in the context of this greater conversation, I was obviously more like understanding Evelyn's point, because Monique said something a little bit insensitive towards bisexuality inadvertently, which was obviously a great moment that Taylor Jenkins Reid used to bring in Evelyn, and really also bring in first of all, Evelyn saying the word bisexual, which is rare in books or in anything really. And it got to bring this beautiful quote. yeah, sexuality is a sincere expression of desire and pleasure, which I think is fantastic. It's just such a beautiful quote. Like Taylor Jenkins Reid, "You've got my heart." And then the last quote I did highlight later on in the same page. "Celia may have left me in a huff, but it was a death by 1,000 cuts. I hurt her with these tiny scratches day after day, and then I got surprised when it left a wound too big to heal." Not only is this quote, woo, exceptional, you mean like tiny scratches day by day until, and I was surprised until it left a wound too big to heal. It's beautifully written. It's also like Evelyn totally like having grown now. I realize it's been decades since that moment that she hurt Celia previously, because she's saying this as like the 70 or 80-year-old woman that she is. But like the growth, and also the self, like she really like settles into her mistakes and into who she is as a person. And also the another reason why this quote is amazing to me is because she says the term "death by 1,000 cuts," which is also a Taylor Swift song and one of my favorites, if not my favorite of hers, and definitely my favorite on Lover. But yeah, and that is a perfect quote, I think, to end off on my little quote read through, okay, of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Also, can we just talk for a second? The last chapter in the book is chapter 69. I mean, girl, did you do it on purpose? You can tell me if you did. Okay, it's a safe space. But that is all I have for you guys today. Another amazing read, another new all-time favorite. So excited, so happy that Book Talk did not let me down, which is always nice. But thank you so much for watching. If you watch all the way to the end, thank you very much. And if you watch all the way to the end, we will leave an emoji in the comments down below, and it will be a dress emoji. Because if you've read the book, you know white dress. If you have a green dress emoji in your phone, I don't know, Android, iPhone, you know, things change, but if you have a green dress, even better, but any dress. And that is all I have for you guys today. I think I said that 3 times already. But as always, my social media are always linked down below, and I'm always at GabysPages. If you want ways to support this channel, my Amazon wish list is down below. You can buy me, you know, a book or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and I will of course read it and review it for you guys, as well as my Ko-fi for donations, and my book outlet and TubeBuddy referral codes are always down below. Please don't forget to like, comment, and of course subscribe, and click that little bell icon so you can finally join the nerd gang, and so you can be notified of every new video. Bye bye.